Um, so there's this quote by George Orwell that gets thrown around a lot on social media these days. You've probably seen it meme-imified like 100 times on your feed.
Oh yeah, the one about controlling the past, right?
Yeah, exactly. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And you know it's a chilling thought, right? It implies that reality isn't fixed, that it's something that can be edited like a Word document.
Right.
But here's the thing about that quote. It's abstract. It feels very philosophical. But what happens when you take that concept out of a dystopian novel and apply it to the real world? Like, what does it actually look like when a state decides to just hit the delete button on a specific group of people?
Well, it stops being a philosophical exercise and it becomes a logistical one. And honestly, that is the terrifying part of the sources we're looking at today. To erase a history, you don't just need an ideology, you need machinery.
Yeah, you need a system.
It's exactly a system that can process human beings into silence. You need to burn the records and intimidate the witnesses and ensure that the narrative is written exclusively by the people holding the guns.
And that is exactly why today's deep dive is going to be a little different. We aren't just telling a story about what happened in the past. We are really getting into the fight to save the proof that it happened at all. We're looking at the fragility of truth in the face of just overwhelming power.
And we are looking at the massive resilience required to preserve that truth. So today we are focusing on a very specific, very dark chapter of history. We're talking about the human rights violations in Punjab, India during the 1980s and 90s.
Right.
But we are viewing all of this through the lens of a massive digital fortress of memory. The sources refer to it as the Sikh National Archives of Canada.
Or as the cool kids and the archivists call it, SNNA.
That's right, SNSC. Pronounced just like you're eating a snack.
But let's be super clear right off the bat. This isn't a snack in the light and fluffy sense. This isn't your local library hosting a big sale. This is a monumental effort to reclaim a narrative that was almost successfully wiped out.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking.
And we're going to be talking about a man named Jaswant Singh Khalra. It's a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who knows this history. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a politician. He was just a guy who used data, boring, mundane municipal data, to challenge an entire regime.
His story is really the centerpiece here. It is the ultimate example of what I'd call archival resistance. But before we can appreciate the solution, the archives, the data, the preservation, we have to understand the problem.
We have to understand the mechanism of the erasure itself.
Precisely. And to do that, we really need to go back in time.
And we aren't just going back to the 80s, right? Because looking at the source material you sent over, it makes a very compelling argument that if you start the story in 1984, you're coming in during the second act.
Right, you've missed the setup completely.
Yeah, to understand why Punjab burned, we have to look at the spark. And the sources say that spark was actually lit in the 1970s.
It was.
Yeah.
You cannot understand the explosion without understanding the pressure cooker. And the pressure cooker was the political climate of India under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in the early 70s. This is where all the dominoes start to fall.
So let's set the scene for everyone listening. It's in 1971. Indira Gandhi is the most powerful woman in India, arguably one of the most powerful people in the world at that time. She is running for re-election in her constituency, Ray Bareilly, and her opponent is a man named Raj Narain.
And in the grand scheme of things, Narain is the total underdog.
Right. And when the votes are counted, Gandhi wins. She wins by an absolute landslide.
Which in a normal election cycle, that's the end of the story, right?
Right.
The loser gives a concession speech, maybe writes a memoir and goes home. But Raj Narain didn't do that. He looked at the way the election was run and he said, this wasn't fair.
He cried foul.
He did way more than that. He filed a petition in the High Court of Allahabad. He alleged that Indira Gandhi had used government machinery and state resources and bribery to rig the election.
Wow.
Now, you have to understand the gravity of this for a second. He is accusing the sitting prime minister of electoral fraud. In most developing democracies of that era, a case like that would just disappear.
Yeah, the judge would get transferred or the files would conveniently catch fire in the basement.
Exactly. But that didn't happen here. And this is a huge testament to the independence of the Indian judiciary at that specific moment in time. The case actually went to trial. And on June 12, 1975, Justice Jagmohanlal Sinha delivered a verdict that shook the country to its foundations.
He found the prime minister guilty?
Guilty of electoral malpractices. And the verdict was incredibly severe. Her election was declared null and void. She was unseated from parliament and barred from holding any elected office for 6 years.
That is just massive. That's a constitutional earthquake. So in a functioning democracy, this is the system working right. The leader breaks the rules, the court catches them, the leader steps down.
Theoretically, yes. But this is the pivot point for our entire story. This is the moment where the timeline fractures. Because Indira Gandhi did not step down. She did not respect the verdict at all.
She basically viewed her own personal power as synonymous with the stability of the nation.
She essentially said, I am the state, therefore a threat to my position is a threat to national security.
Which is like the absolute classic dictator playbook. If you can't win by the rules, you just flip the board over.
She flipped the board over completely. Instead of resigning, she declared a state of emergency in 1975.
Now, I've heard this term, the emergency, used a lot in Indian history contexts. But for you listening right now who might not be experts in 1970s South Asian politics, let's unpack what that actually meant for the average person. Was it just a political reshuffling?
Oh, no, not at all. It was a total suspension of democracy. The Constitution was effectively suspended. Fundamental rights were gone. Censorship was imposed instantly. I mean, government officers were literally sitting in newspaper offices crossing out headlines they didn't like.
Wow.
Opposition leaders were thrown in jail without trial. It was just total authoritarian control.
So the lights basically go out on democracy, complete blackout. And this is where the connection to Punjab comes in, isn't it? Because while a lot of the country was just paralyzed by fear, the sources talk about a very specific resistance movement brewing up north.
That's right. The resistance was fiercest in Punjab, and specifically among the Sikhs. They launched what was known as the Save Democracy Morcha, or the Agitation to Save Democracy.
And they viewed this as a moral imperative, right?
Exactly. Their faith teaches them to stand up against tyranny. And here was a tyrant who had been convicted by a court of law refusing to leave office.
And crucially, they organized this resistance from a very specific place.
Yeah. They organized for the precincts of the Golden Temple, Sri Darbar Sahib in Amritsar. This is vital context for what happens later. Historically, the Golden Temple was considered a sanctuary. It was a spiritual center deemed completely off-limits to the police and the state machinery.
So the political opposition to the dictatorship became geographically centered right in the spiritual heart of the Sikh faith.
You can see the tension building here. The state starts seeing the temple not just as a place of worship, but as a fortified center of defiance.
Absolutely. Now, eventually, the emergency ends. Elections are held in 1977. Gandhi loses. Democracy is restored. But history is full of these dark twists. She manages to claw her way back to power in 1980.
And she had a very long memory. The source material we're looking at is explicit about this. It suggests that when she returned to power, she initiated a strategy that they describe as a war of vengeance against the Sikhs.
A war of vengeance.
Yes. She wanted to punish the community that had defied her during the emergency. So while a conflict that erupts in the 1980s is often framed in mainstream history books as, the state versus separatists or the state versus terrorists, the archive suggests we need to look at it differently.
That it began as political retribution that was deliberately escalated?
Precisely. Which brings us to 1984.
Yeah, we cannot talk about this history without talking about 1984. It is the defining scar on the timeline. Now, I want to pause here on terminology for a second. In most Western textbooks, and even in Indian media, the event we're about to discuss is called Operation, the military code name. But our sources and the community fundamentally reject that name.
They do, and for very good reason. That military code name is clinical. It sounds like a strategic maneuver on a map, right? It sanitizes the sheer violence of what happened. The community prefers to call it the Saka Akal Takhat Sahib, or the Battle of Amritsar.
And Saka means what exactly in this context?
It refers to a great, tragic, historical event involving martyrdom and sacrifice. It centers the experience of the victims and the faithful, rather than the generals who ordered the attack.
So let's look at what actually happened. June 1984. The Indian Army moves on the Golden Temple.
And the timing is just heartbreakingly cynical. They chose the martyrdom day of the fifth Guru, Guru Arjan Dev Ji.
Why does that specific date matter so much?
Because on that specific day, the complex isn't just full of the political activists the government claimed they were hunting. It is packed with thousands of pilgrims, families, grandmothers, children, villagers from all over Punjab who came to pray. The complex was at absolute maximum capacity.
And the government sends in the army anyway.
Not just the army. They sent in tanks, Vijayanta main battle tanks. They used artillery. They used heavy machine guns. The source material uses a metaphor here that is just devastatingly accurate. They call it using a sledgehammer to kill a flea.
That is a visceral image.
It's a military cliché used to describe the use of wildly disproportionate force. I mean, even if you accept the government's narrative that there were armed militants inside, you do not use main battle tanks against a house of worship filled with civilians unless your goal is something else entirely.
Unless your goal is psychological domination.
Exactly. They destroyed the Akal Takhat, which is the temporal seat of Sikh authority. They reduced it to rubble.
Just imagine the psychological impact of that. I mean, for a Sikh, that isn't just a building. That is the center of the universe. To see it burning, to see tanks rolling over the sacred marble.
It completely shattered the psyche of the community. It told them you are not safe. Your holiest spaces are not safe. And the casualties were horrific. Thousands of innocent pilgrims died in the crossfire. The archives contain accounts of the aftermath that are extremely difficult to read. Bodies piled up.
And the library burning, that's a key point for our discussion today, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't just kill people, they burned historical manuscripts.
They burned the Sikh reference library. Irreplaceable handwritten manuscripts by the gurus were lost. This was an attack on memory as much as it was an attack on people. But the thing you have to understand is 1984 was really just the opening act of the violence.
It set the stage for what the sources call the era of darkness.
Yes, the period post-1984 leading into the 90s. The narrative often gets very murky here in mainstream media, but the archives are very clear. They describe Punjab becoming a full-blown police state.
The central government gave the Punjab police what they euphemistically called a free hand. Now, when a government tells a police force they have a free hand to deal with an insurgency, what they are really saying is, we will not look too closely at how you do it.
It effectively means the complete suspension of the rule of law. And we have to talk about the legal framework that allowed this to happen, specifically a law called TIA, the Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act.
TIA. Yeah, I've read about this. It's often cited as one of the most draconian laws in modern Indian history.
It was an absolute nightmare for civil liberties. Look, TIA allowed the police to detain anyone without formal charges for up to a year. Think about that. A year in a cell without being charged.
That's horrifying.
And it shifted the burden of proof onto the accused. So instead of innocent until proven guilty, it was guilty until you can somehow prove you're innocent, which is almost impossible when you're locked in a black site interrogation center.
And perhaps most dangerously, it made confessions given to police officers admissible in court.
Yes, which is a huge red flag. In most legal systems, police confessions aren't admissible, specifically because it encourages torture. If a cop can beat a confession out of you and then use that piece of paper to legally convict you, he has every incentive to beat you.
Exactly. And that is what happened. Torture became entirely systemic. But the free hand went beyond just arrests and torture. It created an incentive structure for murder. The sources mentioned that police officers were actually rewarded for killing militants.
Rewarded with cash bounties. Accelerated promotions. If you were a sub-inspector and you wanted to become a superintendent, the fastest way to get there was to show a high body count. You had to prove that you were effective against terrorism.
But listen to that. That creates a terrifying market force. If I need a promotion and I can't find a quote-unquote top terrorist, I just need a body.
Anybody. A student leader. A farmer who looked at me wrong. A young man wearing a turban in a way I didn't like. This led directly to the phenomenon known as the fake encounter.
We see this term all over the SNAXI archives. Fake encounter. For a listener in the US or Europe, an encounter usually just means, a meeting, bumping into someone. But in South Asian legal terms, it means something very specific.
An encounter is supposed to mean a spontaneous shootout. The police bump into criminals, shots are fired, the criminals are killed in self-defense. That's a genuine encounter. A fake encounter is a staged extrajudicial execution.
So walk us through the anatomy of a fake encounter. How does it actually work, according to the documents?
Well, the police pick up a victim. Let's say a young man from a farming village. They pick him up at night, usually right in front of his family. They don't file an arrest warrant. They take him to an interrogation center.
And then the torture begins.
They torture him. Maybe they kill him during the torture, or maybe they decide to liquidate him later. Then they take the body to a field or a canal bank. They fire some shots in the air. They plant a weapon on the body. And then they file a police report saying, we were ambushed, we returned fire, an unidentified terrorist was killed.
It provides complete legal cover for murder.
It wraps murder in the cloak of heroism. The officers get medals for neutralizing a threat. But there is a massive logistical problem here. In any civilized society, even if you kill a criminal, the body belongs to the family. You have to return the body so they can perform the last rites.
Right. But if the police return the body...
The family sees the truth. They see the fingernails pulled out. They see the burn marks from the torture. They see that the bullet wounds don't match the story of a shootout from 20 yards away. The body is the evidence.
So the police quickly realize they can't return the bodies.
No. They adopted a policy of mass cremation. They would take these bodies, sometimes truckloads of them at night, to municipal cremation grounds, and they would order the attendants to burn them immediately.
And this brings us to what might be the most chilling word in the entire archive. Unidentified?
Yes. They listed the bodies as unidentified. Think about the profound cruelty of that. These were boys picked up from their own homes. The police knew exactly who they were. The officers probably had the victims' ID cards right in their pockets. But on the official record, they became unclaimed, unidentified.
It's not just murder. It's erasure. It's gaslighting on an industrial scale.
It creates a legal black hole. Because if there is no record of arrest and no body to prove a death, then legally speaking, nothing happened. The family goes to the courts and says, the police took my son. The police say we never touched him. Maybe he ran away to Canada. Maybe he joined a militant group underground.
And the court says, bring us proof.
Exactly. The court says, bring us proof. But the proof has literally been turned to ash and washed into the river.
It seems like the perfect crime. A closed loop of state power where the victim just simply ceases to exist.
He was almost perfect. But every system, no matter how totalitarian, relies on bureaucracy. And bureaucracy always leaves a trail.
And this is where the story completely shifts. This is where we meet the man who found the trail. Jaswant Singh Khalra.
Jaswant Singh Khalra. He is really the heart of this deep dive. And what I find so compelling about his story is that he wasn't a superhero in the cinematic sense. He wasn't some action star. He was a bank director.
Yeah, he worked at a cooperative bank in Amritsar.
A regular citizen.
Yeah.
Educated, dignified middle class. But he was also the general secretary of the human rights wing of the Akali Dal. So he was listening. He was hearing the screams of the families who were coming to him saying, my son is gone. The police took him. Help me.
And he realized pretty quickly that the legal route, filing habeas corpus petitions, was just hitting a brick wall. You can't demand the state produce the body if the state insists there is no body.
Exactly. He needed data.
Yeah.
He needed something that the police couldn't simply deny. And this is the aha moment that defines his entire legacy. He realized that while the police were operating completely above the law, the municipal workers at the cremation grounds were still operating within the rules of their mundane jobs.
Let's really break this down because it's brilliant. It is basically forensic accounting applied to human rights abuses.
It really is. Look, to burn a body, you need firewood, a lot of it, and cloth to wrap the body. And ghee, these things cost money. The cremation grounds are run by the municipality. The managers of these grounds have to account for their inventory. If they use 500 rupees worth of wood, they have to write down exactly why so they can get reimbursed by the city.
The receipt.
The receipt. The firewood registers. The police didn't care about these registers at all because they thought it was just boring, low-level admin work. But in those registers, the attendants were writing down the absolute truth.
What were they actually writing?
They were writing things like, body brought by police station Sadar, named Sukhdev Singh, father's name Gobarchand Singh, village Virka. And then in the police column right next to it, it would be marked unidentified.
So the unidentified body was fully identified in the purchase log for the wood used to burn it.
Precisely. Khalra started visiting these cremation grounds. He was a very patient man. He befriended the workers. He drank tea with them. He didn't storm in demanding documents. He just investigated quietly. And slowly they let him see the books.
And he started cross-referencing. He took the massive lists of missing persons from the grieving mothers and compared them line by line to the names in the firewood registers.
Yeah, the matches just started piling up. He focused his initial investigation on just 3 districts: Amritsar, Tarn-Taran, and Majitha.
And what did he find? What was the scale of this?
In just those 3 districts, he found evidence of over 25,000 illegal cremations.
Let's just pause on that for you listening. 25,000.
25,000. That is the population of an entire small town, just gone, burned secretly. And remember, Punjab has 12 other districts. If you extrapolate that number across the entire state, the scale is almost unimaginable.
Khalra had found the smoking gun.
He had the receipts literally proving that the state was capturing citizens, murdering them, and secretly disposing of the bodies, all while lying straight to the Supreme Court.
That number changes everything. It turns allegations into statistics. It turns rumors into hard, undeniable evidence.
But Khalra knew exactly what he was holding. He wasn't naive. He knew that by exposing this, he was challenging the most powerful men in Punjab, men like KPS Gill, the police chief, and the political leadership. He knew he was painting a massive target on his own back.
There is a fable that Khalra often told. I think it's really important we share it here because it perfectly explains his mindset. It explains why a bank director would risk his life for strangers.
Yes, the fable of the lamp. It's hauntingly beautiful. He would tell this story about the sun setting. He said when the sun was first setting, as its distance to Earth narrowed on the horizon, the light on Earth was diminishing. People were afraid that when the sun would finally set, darkness would be permanent.
Everyone is terrified of the dark. It represents ignorance, oppression, erasure.
But then the fable goes on. Far, far in the land somewhere, in a small hut, a little lantern lifted its wick and said, I challenge the darkness. If not everywhere, but at least in my small corner, I will not let the darkness settle itself around me.
I challenge the darkness.
That was his philosophy. He said, I will say, Ankila Punjab, the self-respecting Punjab, is the light that will challenge it. And I pray to the Guru who identifies with truth to keep this light burning. He saw himself as that tiny wick. He wasn't trying to defeat the sun alone. He was just refusing to let the darkness be absolute in his one little corner.
But the darkness always fights back. Khalra took this evidence, this massive database of the dead, and he went to the courts.
He filed petitions. He released the data to the press in January 1995. He presented the proof of illegal arrests and secret cremations. The state denied it, of course. They called it mischievous propaganda.
So realizing the Indian courts were just dragging their feet, Khalra decides to internationalize the issue. In 1995, he travels to the UK and then over to Canada, invited by the World Sikh Organization, the WSO.
He brought the registers to the West. He met with Canadian parliamentarians. He showed them the evidence directly. He basically said, look at what the world's largest democracy is doing to its own citizens in the dark.
And the reaction in Canada was intense. His hosts there immediately realized the danger he was in.
They did. The source material is very clear on this. His friends and supporters in Canada told him, Jaswant, do not go back. If you go back to Punjab now after releasing this data, they will kill you. Apply for asylum right now. Bring your family here. We will keep you safe.
This is the moment in the movie where the hero has an outright. He can walk away. He can live a long, comfortable life in Toronto or Vancouver.
But Khalra refused. He told them, I cannot abandon the families. I have started this work. I must finish it. If I run away now, who will speak for the dead? He consciously chose to go back into the fire.
He flies back to India in mid-1995, and the police didn't wait very long.
September 6, 1995. It was a Wednesday morning around 9:15 a.m. Khalra was at his home in Amritsar, specifically in the Kabir Park locality. He was outside washing his car, just a completely domestic, normal routine.
And then they came.
A police vehicle, a Maruti Gypsy, pulled up. Commandos of the Punjab police acting under the direct orders of SSP Abo. Ajit Singh Sandhu jumped out. They grabbed him. They threw him in the vehicle. It happened in broad daylight. Witnesses saw the whole thing.
And when his family ran to the police station right after to ask, where is he, what was the response?
The standard wall of denial. We don't know who you're talking about. We never arrested him. Maybe terrorists kidnapped him. Maybe he ran away.
But the truth eventually surfaced.
It did, but it took years. And it came from inside the system itself. A special police officer named Kuldeep Singh, who was essentially a witness to the end, later confessed. He revealed that Khalra was held in illegal custody at the Chabal police station in Tarn.
The irony is brutal. He was held in the exact same district where he had uncovered thousands of bodies in the register.
He was tortured, brutally. They wanted him to recant. They wanted him to sign a statement saying the 25,000 number was a fabrication.
Did he break?
He never broke. He completely refused to deny the truth. Eventually, in late October 1995, he was shot twice in the chest. His body was thrown into the Harika Canal. The man who had fought so hard to give dignity to the unidentified dead was himself made to disappear without a trace.
It is a devastating end to his life, but it wasn't the end of his work.
No, and that is the crucial distinction here. They killed the man, but they fundamentally failed to kill the data. Khalra had already released the reports. The genie was completely out of the bottle.
And the legal battle continued from there.
It was a long, grinding, painful process. The Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, eventually validated Khalra's findings. They confirmed that thousands of bodies had indeed been illegally cremated. And regarding Khalra's murder itself, it took 10 years. In 2005, 6 police officials were finally sentenced. In 2011, the Supreme Court of India upheld life imprisonment for 4 of the accused.
It's a measure of justice. But the scale of the crime, or, 25,000 bodies versus 4 convictions, it feels terribly unbalanced. However, the real victory wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in the preservation of the truth. Which brings us back to the present day and back to SNAC.
The Sikh National Archives of Canada. This institution is the direct spiritual successor to Khalra's work. It is the fortress of memory we mentioned at the start.
And we really have to talk about the architect behind this fortress, because archives don't just magically appear out of thin air.
No, they're built by dedicated people. In this case, the sources highlight Ajit Singh Sahota.
Ajit Singh Sahota.
The documents describe him as the instrumental force. He has spent decades, literally decades, researching, writing, and collecting documents. He realized that if the community didn't actively preserve its own history, the state would simply rewrite it for them. He is the custodian who ensured that the papers didn't get lost, that the photos didn't fade away.
So what exactly is inside SNAC? If you're listening and you go to the website sikhnationalarchives.com, what are you actually looking at?
You're looking at a vast, fully digitized collection. It includes books, legal documents, photographs, audio recordings, and video materials. It covers Sikh history broadly, but with a real laser focus on human rights and the specific dark period we just discussed.
And the mission statement is incredibly powerful. The source says SNAC commits itself to preserving the historical data on Sikh history and using all means available at its disposal to work towards ending the unlawful detention, intimidation, and torture of innocent citizens.
It actively connects the past to the present. It says we preserve this history not for nostalgia, but as a weapon against future tyranny.
This connects perfectly to a concept you mentioned earlier, sovereignty of information. Can we expand on that a bit?
Absolutely. This is a critical concept, especially for the digital age. If a minority community relies on the government to house its archives, they are inherently vulnerable. The government can declassify or reclassify documents at will.
Yeah.
They can accidentally lose files. They can spin the narrative.
But if you own the archive yourself,
If you own the servers, if you digitize the documents, if you distribute the data globally, you have sovereignty. You are saying, we will define our own history. We will keep our own count of the dead. You cannot delete us because we are quite literally everywhere.
that is incredibly empowering. And for you listening, whether you're a researcher, a university student, an educator, or just someone who wants to know the unfiltered truth, this resource is an absolute goldmine.
It allows you to bypass the filtered, state-approved history entirely. You don't have to rely on a textbook approved by the same government that committed the acts. You can go to sikhnationalarchives.com and look at the primary sources yourself. You can read the affidavits, you can see the faces of the victims, you can verify the truth with your own eyes.
And SNAC isn't just a static library either. They are actively, continually building the collection.
Which is where the community comes in. History isn't just sitting in government files, it's in your attic. It's in that old shoebox of letters your grandfather kept. It's in the diaries from the 1980s.
So they have a specific call to action for the listeners, right?
A very specific one. SNAC is asking, do you have personal or family collections? Letters, photos, manuscripts. If you do, please don't let them rot in a basement.
And they're offering to digitize them for people.
Yes, and completely free of charge. They will take your physical documents, scan them professionally, and add them to the digital fortress. You get the pristine digital copies, and the history gets preserved forever.
That is an incredible service, because that one random letter from your uncle in 1988 might seem purely personal to you, but to a historian, it might be the missing piece of a huge puzzle. It might corroborate a date or a location that proves a much larger truth.
Exactly. It's crowdsourced history. By contributing, you are literally helping to build the mosaic.
So here's the plan for you listening right now. If you've been moved by the story of Jaswant Singh Khalra, if you are shocked by the reality of the firewood registers, you need to do something about it.
First, visit the website, sikhnationalarchives.com. That's sikhnationalarchives.com.
Explore the Sikh Archives digital library. See the work for yourself.
Second, if you can, please donate. Storing terabytes of data, maintaining servers, digitizing fragile paper, all of this costs real money. Supporting SNAC is a very direct way to support human rights.
And third, check your own archives. Talk to your parents and your grandparents. If you have documents, get them digitized.
By doing that, you become an active part of the resistance. You become another wick in the lamp.
I really love that we're circling back to that image. Ankila Punjab is the light that will challenge it.
Khalra gave his life to light that lamp. Ajit Singh Sahota has dedicated decades of his life to shielding that flame from the wind. Now it's up to all of us to keep it fueled.
The darkness is only permanent if we let it be. And with institutions like SNIC, we're making sure the lights stay on for good. Oh, and before we wrap up, I wanted to leave you with one final thought based on all these sources. It's fascinating how the tools of erasure have totally flipped.
How do you mean?
Well, think about it. The state used the most basic physical tool, right? Fire and wood to erase these people. And they relied on paper, the firewood registers, to secretly track it. Paper is fragile, it burns easily, but today the community is using digital servers, cloud storage, distributed networks to immortalize that fragile paper. The state used physical destruction to hide the truth, but SNAC is using digital permanence to make sure it can never be destroyed again.
It's a beautiful way to look at it. The ultimate countermeasure.
Exactly. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. It was a heavy one, but absolutely necessary. Go visit SikhNationalarchives.com. We'll see you next time.